Every morning for 2 years, a single dad named Jake would wake up at 5 a.m., drop his son off at school, and then head straight to the same old diner on Maple Street. He wasn't there for the coffee. He was there for a man he'd never even been properly introduced to, an old gentleman who sat alone in the same booth every day, staring out the window like he was waiting for someone who never came. Jake didn't know his name. He just knew the man looked lonely. So every morning, Jake quietly asked the waitress to put the old man's breakfast on his tab. No fanfare, no thank yous expected. Just a small, silent act of kindness. Hey everyone, welcome back to Kindness Diaries. If stories like this warm your heart and remind you that there's still good in the world, please hit that subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and drop a comment telling us about a random act of kindness you've seen or done. Let's keep spreading the light together. Now, let's get into the story. Jake was 32, raising his son Ethan alone after his wife passed away from cancer 3 years earlier. He worked long hours as a mechanic at a local garage, barely making ends meet, but he never complained. Every morning after dropping Ethan at school, he'd swing by the diner. He'd order his usual black coffee, sit at the counter, and watch the old man. The man never spoke much, just nodded when the waitress brought his plate of toast and eggs. Sometimes he'd smile faintly at Jake like he knew something Jake didn't. One rainy Tuesday in November, Jake noticed the old man wasn't there. The booth sat empty. He asked the waitress, and she shook her head. He hasn't been in for 3 days. I'm worried about him. Jake's stomach twisted. He asked for the address from the diner's records, something he'd never done before. The waitress hesitated but finally slid him a slip of paper. Jake drove straight there. The house was small, faded blue with a crooked mailbox. Jake knocked. No answer. He knocked again. Finally, the door creaked open. The old man stood there in a robe, looking frail and surprised. His name was Harold. I'm sorry, Jake said quickly. I haven't seen you at the diner. I wanted to make sure you're okay. Harold stared at him for a long moment, eyes glassy. Then he stepped aside. Come in, son. Inside, the house was quiet, filled with dusty books and old photographs. Harold sat down slowly. You're the one who's been paying for my breakfast, he said. It wasn't a question. Jake nodded, suddenly embarrassed. I just figured you looked like you could use a friend. Harold let out a shaky laugh that turned into a cough. You have no idea how much that meant. I lost my wife 5 years ago. Our only son died in Iraq when he was 22. I've been alone ever since. Some mornings I didn't even want to get out of bed, but knowing someone was waiting for me at the diner, it gave me a reason. Jake didn't know what to say. He just sat there, listening. For the first time in years, Harold talked about his wife's laugh, about his son's last letter, about how he'd stopped believing anyone cared. Jake listened. That's all he did. And when he left, Harold squeezed his hand and said, "Thank you, Jake." For seeing me the next morning, Harold was back at the diner. He waved Jake over and asked him to sit. They started talking every day. Simple things, baseball, weather, how Ethan was doing in school. Jake brought Ethan one morning, and Harold's eyes lit up. He told Ethan stories about the war, about courage, about never giving up. Ethan started calling him a Mr. Harold. Jake started calling him a friend. Months passed. Harold got stronger. He started smiling more. He even laughed. Real deep laughs. Jake kept paying for his breakfast, but now it didn't feel like charity. It felt like family. Then one morning, everything changed. Jake walked into the diner and saw 4 men in dark suits standing near Harold's booth. 2 more stood by the door, big guys like bodyguards. Harold was sitting calmly, sipping coffee, a small smile on his face. Jake froze. Mr. Thompson, one of the suits said, stepping forward. I'm sorry to interrupt, but we need to speak with you. Jake's heart pounded. He glanced at Harold, who nodded gently. It's okay, Jake. They're with me. The lead lawyer cleared his throat. Mr. Thompson, my name is David Reynolds. I represent the estate of Harold Grayson. Mr. Grayson has asked us to be here today. Jake looked confused. Estate Harold spoke up, voice steady. Jake, I've been meaning to tell you this for a while. My full name is Harold Grayson. I'm the founder of Grayson Industries. I sold the company 20 years ago for a lot of money, more than most people ever see. But after my wife and son were gone, none of it mattered. I moved here, lived quietly, tried to disappear. I didn't want the money. Imani, I just wanted to be seen. Jake felt the room tilt. You're rich, Harold chuckled. But I've spent the last 2 years watching you. You didn't know who I was. You didn't do it for reward. You did it because you're kind, and that's rarer than any fortune. The lawyer handed Jake an envelope. Inside was a check, 7 figures, a trust fund for Ethan's college, a paid-off house, and a foundation in Jake's name to help single parents and the elderly. Jake stared at the numbers, tears blurring his vision. I didn't do this for I know, Harold said softly. That's why it means everything. The diner went quiet. The waitress wiped her eyes. Customers clapped slowly, then louder. Jake hugged Harold, both men crying. Harold leaned in. You gave me back my life, Jake. Now let me give you yours. Final scene. Fade to Jake and Ethan moving into a new home, Harold sitting on the porch waving. Text on screen. Kindness doesn't always come back the way we expect, but it always comes back. So the next time you see someone who looks a little lost, a little alone, remember Jake. Go out there today and be the reason someone smiles, because in a world that can feel so cold, kindness is the warmest thing we've got. Thanks for watching Kindness Diaries. We'll see you in the next one. Keep shining.